A lot of you out there have been bombarded, if you go to college, with the idea that the Bible is not history, that the Bible is not a historical document, and that the Bible is a hodgepodge of different authors who claim ancient times but were really put together at a much later time. The Bible critics claim that the Torah was composed around the 6th century in the time of one of the kings of Judah, Yoshio, and at that time the ideas were put together in a way that that became known as the final version of the book of the Torah. If you look at the Jewish encyclopedia, they have that the Torah is essentially 7 different books, or put together by 7 different authors or so, or 5 different authors, a whole bunch of different authorships, and that it is not the work of a single scribe, but rather many scribes put together. So the question is, does this theory pass the muster? Does it really, when you examine it, does it really fit in? And what the Bible critics will do is people like me, or I'm just a little nothing, but people like the Rebbe, or people like Rabbi Soloveitchik, J.B. Soloveitchik, or Professor Cassuto, or many of the other rabbis who dealt with their arguments, it's all called apologetic literature, like you're apologizing for the Torah. We don't apologize for the Torah. It's either true or it's not true. So if it's true, then it's the Word of God. If it's not true, then you don't have to follow it. If it's not true, it's not true. Literature doesn't interest me. Culture doesn't interest me. It's either the Word of God or it's not the Word of God. So they put this to a test in the 1980s, and it was discovered to a level that is completely convincing that the book of Genesis, which supposedly was written by 3 different authors, is really one author. They still claim it was written by several authors. Why have they not changed, despite the fact that this was done by several different scientists putting it together, looking at all of the components of the Torah, seeing the differences and nuances in language? Why haven't they acknowledged this? The answer is, if they acknowledge that there's one author for the book of Genesis, which is the basis of their criticism, then they may have to acknowledge that there was one author for the entire book of the Torah. At which point, it's a small step. If it was one author, maybe it was Moses. Maybe Moses really heard it from God. So they cannot accept that they were wrong. Why can't they accept that they were wrong? The computer analysis disproves their position. Yeah, but there's a slight possibility that they may still be right according to the computer. But I want you to understand this in context. The same computer analysis that says 80% chance that the book of Genesis was written by one author also concludes there's only 25% chance that Shakespeare wrote all of his plays. And yet you take it as a cardinal principle that Shakespeare wrote all of his plays. So something that's only got a 25% of consistency, you accept it as a single author, then something that's obviously far ahead of that should certainly be accepted. But they don't, because that would pull the rug under all of their theories, and they don't want to accept that their theories are bunk. One of the major arguments that they have is that the names of God change, and therefore that proves that this is a different culture. because the ancients called their god by one name. They either called him Marduk, or they called him Baal, or they called him whatever, whatever they called him, Ra, whatever it was. They had names for their gods, and they were consistent in those names. But that's not true, first of all, number one. Number two, the name Elokim means the universal God. The name Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, which is the Creator, the Merciful One, is always associated with a personal relationship. That's number one. So when you have creation, in the story of creation, you're going to have Elokim. But more so than that, Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan demolishes the Elokust, the Elokim hypothesis told to you by the Bible critics by the following. He says the following: the Torah is a blueprint of the creation of the universe. The Torah universe is a five-dimensional universe. This reflects the idea that there are five faces, five systems in a 10 sphirot system. God created the world using 10 sphirot, and in the 10 spherots, they are called five partsufim, five faces, five structures, five systems. Each system, each partsuf represents a different dimension. You've got length, width, and height, and then you have time and good and evil. This creates a five-dimensional system. In a dimensional system, the perfection of that system has a certain number of coordinates or points. For example, when you have a single dimension, which is a straight line has 2 points, beginning and an end. If it's an infinite, it begins in one place, doesn't end in the other place, but still, as it grows, there are 2 points that identify that dimension. When you want to go ahead and have an area, you extend it from a line to an area, you have to double the number of points. You go from 2 points to 4 points. That's the perfection of an area that is the same size in all 4 sides, and that makes that an area should be something that has 4 points to it. When you want to maximize a 3-dimensional area in its perfect form, you have the image of a cube. A cube is twice as much, and therefore you have 8 points. When you go then to a 4th dimension, you'll have to double the number of points, and you'll have 16 points. Each time you go to a different dimension, you're doubling the number of points. So when you get to the 5th dimension, you'll double 16, and you'll have 32 points. What is this important? It's important because the idea of a point, which is a specific location, a quantified, limited place, that is associated with the name Elokim. Elokim has many names to it, meaning the universal God, the power, the infinite power of the Creator, but it also means the one that establishes law and order, and makes things definite, and that indicates a point. So the name Elokim is associated with points. How many points would you have to have for a 5-dimensional creation? 32. Exactly 32 times in the story of creation, the name Elokim is mentioned. So therefore, the name Elokim is associated with the 5-dimensional universe in its perfection, having 32 points. Now, these 32 points correspond to things that we are used to. What are they? The alphabet and the sphirot. Anybody learning Kabbalah knows that there are 10 sphirot, 10 expressions of God in a different way, which are called the sphira, a clear light that emanates from God. God creates these sphirot, which together become the way in which God appears in the world. And these 10 sphirot are recorded as Keter, Chachma, Bina, and then Chesed, Gvura, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yisod, and Malchut. There are 10. And when The Keter is not included as a Sphira because the Keter means the crown, which is transcendent. Then Das, which is a quasi-Sphira, takes over. But you have only 10 Sphirot, and you have 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet. Together they equal 32. And all of the times, every single point where the name Elohim is mentioned in the Torah, it has a specific association with a particular Sphira or with a specific letter of the alphabet. Those who are expert in Kabbalah know those relationships. But it's amazing, 32 times the name Elohim in the story of creation exactly, which correspond to the Torah's description or the Kabbalah's description of a five-dimensional universe, having 32 points in a five-dimensional universe, and therefore requiring 32 times that the name of that's why the name of Elohim is mentioned, because God is quantifying, creating a limited, a specific universe in 5 dimensions. Only when the story of Adam comes around, and you have judgment, and you have to have a relationship between God and the creatures, is the name Yud-Kei Vav-Kei brought in. The name of God, as God is the not just the judge, but as God is compassionate and God cares. Only then do you add the name Yud-Kei Vav-Kei in the 2nd chapter of Genesis. But there are no two different cults here. There's no Elokust cult and the J cult. These are expressions of the divine, and God has chosen to express himself in different ways. Different names express God in different ways, and there's a rule to this. There's a pattern to this, and it's always consistent. And so the computer proves the Torah was written by one person, and all the anomalies have an answer. The answer is found in the consistent transmission of the Torah. This is not apologetics. There is an oral transmission of the Torah which explains all of these things for anybody who's looking for it. But the Bible critics are not looking for answers. They just want to hear their own questions so that they can do what they do. Because other religions are inconsistent. Other religions are made up. The only religion where there was a witness of an entire nation, God came down on the mountain and spoke to the entire nation, there's only been one religion that has expressed this, that the entire family, the entire unit of the Jewish people, men, women, and children from all walks of life, all testified that they saw God coming down a mountain and giving the Torah to them vis-a-vis Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses. And this is a tradition that has never been paralleled, never had any kind of competition. The Christianity was given to a leader in front of his students, not in front of the entire people. Muhammad, none of his prophecies was said by God in front of the people. He said certain things, and then he went on a campaign. He was successful as a warrior, and that became prophecy. Then according to that, Genghis Khan should be a prophet. According to that, Napoleon should be a prophet, etc., etc. But that's not the truth. And they understand that, and therefore they want to put the Jewish religion, the Torah, into the same categories. But it's not. It either was given to us by God or not. And if it is, then we're all obligated to follow it.